Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats, weekly podcast episode number 42. I'm your host, Dan Matson, aka Wooden Boat Dan, and this is the world's first podcast fully devoted to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden boats. Yes, folks, there is a certain romance about wooden boats that is pretty cool. They feel good, they look nice, they're hand-built, one at a time. Some of them have some bright work, which looks gorgeous, takes some maintenance, but it's pretty cool stuff. Well, I hope you've had a good week. I've had a good week this week. I went to the Center for Wooden Boats Wooden Boat Festival in Seattle on Sunday. This is their 36th annual show, and I did a few interviews there, including today's featured segment, which is an interview I did with Darryl Carver. Darryl owns an L. Francis Herreshoff designed 28-foot Canoe Yawl. Beautiful sailboat. It's actually ketch rigged. So it's got a mizzen mast and sail. I'm learning all this stuff. This is pretty fun. You know, a couple of years ago I thought a mizzen was a cut of steak that you only ate medium rare or something. No, I'm just kidding. Gotta have a little fun with it though. So that is the featured segment today, the interview with Darryl, talking about his boat, which I got to see and look over and take some pictures of. The interview is only about 10 or 11 minutes, so it's going to be a shorter podcast today, but every minute of it will be enjoyable, I'm sure. I would like it if you would connect with me. There's a bunch of ways to do it. Email is a good way, dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest if you look for Wooden Boat Dan there. You can call my voicemail feedback hotline, 424-261-2360. I'm actually considering it calling the cold line because I don't get very many calls on it. But it doesn't cost me anything. It's a Gmail voice line or something, so occasionally my friend Brian Hansen will call and say something rude and I get to play it on the show, so that's kind of fun. So I'm going to keep it up, but if you do have the nerve, then give it a call, 424-261-2360. Well, the festival was really fun this week. My son Josh went with me, and actually my son Luke also. Yes, I have 5 sons, and Josh is the oldest and Luke is the middle son. And they met me there, and we looked at a lot of boats together. Josh took some video while I did some interviews, and we may use that at the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival when I do a presentation there. There was lots of fun boats at the festival as usual. The Adventurous was there, which is a really sweet 1913, 133-foot length overall, crown and shield, BB Crown and Shield designed schooner, gaff top-sailed schooner, I believe. Sweet boat, got to see that. The MV Lotus was there from Port Townsend with Christian Grille, and so that was pretty cool. And then lots of smaller boats. I did an interview with Lloyd Shugart, who owns a 52-foot bridge deck boat designed by Ed Monk Sr. of Seattle, and I'll probably play that interview next week. And so it was a great time. Got to see my buddy Pete Leanhouse. They had the Scamp there, so I got some more pictures of the Scamp. I just can't get enough of the Scamp, it seems like. And if you want to build one of those, August 6th through the 17th in Port Townsend, they're having a class. You can buy a kit and build your own boat and get a lot of it done in about 11 days. Well, beyond that, I've been working on my canoe, my sassafras canoe. And I think I'm into this thing. How many hours? Let's see. I got my hours here. 47. I'm into her 50 hours. I just glassed the bottom. And I always seem to get too much epoxy on, so to get my cloth saturated, then I end up scraping it off with a plastic squeegee type thing. So I end up with excess epoxy, but I think it came out pretty decent. So I did the number 1 panels with glass, and then I glassed the stems, and now I'm going to put one more piece of glass, 3 inches wide, the full length of the stems and the keel for a little extra protection. Protection or protection? I think it's protection. Next, I'll flip her over, glass the inside, put on the decks, epoxy coat barrier the whole boat 1 or 2 times, and then start putting a finish on it. So I am getting there, but it does take time, folks. You don't just build a wooden boat in 3 or 4 hours. Actually, you do if you go to the Wooden Boat Festival and the quick and dirty boat building competitions. Sometimes they build those pretty fast, which is pretty cool. So anyway, that's been my week. Also did a little mountain biking. My wife and I have been getting into mountain biking lately, and went with some friends today to Galbraith Mountain up by Bellingham, Washington, and went on some trails I'm way too old to be on. But I did have my body armor on, and the only injury I sustained is when we got back to the truck, and Dave had the canopy door open on his truck, and I ran into it with my forehead and drew a little blood. But other than that, I had my shin guards on and my arm protectors on, and we had a great time. So I'm loving the mountain biking thing. Now I've just got to make a mountain bike out of wood somehow. Actually, they do make wooden road bike frames. A company over on the peninsula. I've seen those before at the Wooden Boat Festival. Anyway, that's about it for the Yakety Yak today. Other than I did want to read one email on the listener feedback, so I'm going to pause this just for a second. This message is from Darryl Lowe, who lives in Queensland, Australia. And he says, "Hi, Dan. I was listening to your latest podcast last evening while working on the bottom of a new glued lapstrake boat, an Acorn 10, for one of my sons. I live in Queensland, Australia, and have very much enjoyed your podcast since they began, in particular, the stories of those who have left other work behind for a life of making wooden boats. Inspires me to dream a lot. I had the fortune to have an uncle who took me sailing when I was younger, and I worked in a cabinet shop, so I'm hankering back to my youth. Sailing here is mainly sandy beaches and bays with shallow areas where a swing centerboard is desirable for a good picnic. I imagine it's a bit like Florida. I've included a photo of this boat's progress for you, and in the background there's a mirror dinghy that I restored. One at the beach where we live, and another from a recent sailing expedition with a friend in Vanuatu. I don't know how you say that. Anyway, keep it up. Love the listening. I think I'll head over to Amazon, just the excuse I needed. Cheers from Queensland, Darryl Lowe." Hey, Darryl, thanks for that. Great email. I love it. Darryl's got some really nice-looking boats here. He sent me some pictures of, and the beach and the water where he lives. Oh, my goodness. All these shades of blue, and it just looks absolutely gorgeous there. So thanks for the note, Darryl. I appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on to our interview today with Darryl Carver, who owns a 28-foot L. Francis Herreshoff Canoe Yawl. Take it away, Darryl. Okay, it is July 1st, 2012, and I am here with Darryl Carver. Darryl, welcome to the show today.
Thank you.
HookedOnWoodenBoats.com. And so Darryl and I just hooked up this week, actually. Darryl's got a beautiful boat here, 28-foot Herreshoff designed yawl, as it's called.
Well, it's called a yawl, yeah.
It's called a yawl.
It's actually a ketch.
Yeah, it's a ketch rig, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about this boat, Darryl. How long have you had her, and tell me about the design and all that stuff.
We've had it about 13 years. It was built in 1983 by a guy named Hank Chamberlain. It was built on Lopez Island for a person called name was Ted Kennedy, but not the Ted Kennedy.
Not the Ted, yeah.
And he had it for a few years and sold it to another person who had it for about the same time we did. And then we bought it, so we're the third owners.
Okay.
It was designed by L. Francis Herreshoff, I think you said. Do you want the whole story or a short version?
Yeah, give us all the gory details.
L. Francis wrote a book called The Complete Cruiser. And in that, he described some people cruising in the, around Cape Cod, that area. And one of the boats that they encountered during this cruise was a boat that was like this.
Oh.
He called it Rozinante and described the boat and how it worked and stuff. And everybody liked the boat so much from this book that they asked him, people pushed him to actually design it. And being a boat designer, he did. And he did that in the Rudder Magazine. He had this design in the Rudder Magazine, which was very popular at the time.
Yeah.
And so in the mid-50s, 1956, I believe, something like that, this design was published in the Rudder Magazine, and then it was eventually consolidated, a bunch of his design, in the Sensible Cruising Designs book.
Okay, cool.
And since then, people have been building them. People have been building ever since.
Yeah.
This type of boat.
Yeah.
The reason it's a little bit of confusion whether it's a yawl or a ketch. I mean, technically it's a ketch because the mizzen mast is ahead of the rudder post.
Oh.
But he talks about it in this book that there are a bunch of boats used in the estuaries and the rivers of coastal Great Britain, in the Channel area.
Yeah.
That were just handy boats for hauling people and supplies and just pleasure boats that were called yawl boats. Mm-hmm. And it didn't have anything to do with the rig or anything. They're just what they called them, was yawl boats.
I see.
And then a lot of them then were designed with double ends like this, like a canoe, like a big canoe. So it was called a canoe yawl if it was a double-ended boat.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so it's called a canoe yawl just because of that, not because it's actually a yawl. It's still a ketch.
Yeah. So this is a mizzen mast.
This is a mizzen mast
and sail.
Yeah.
So tell me about what that does for a boat.
Well, the yawl boats, one of the things about these boats and boats back before you had motors a lot, before they had motors at all, you had to be able to maneuver using the sails, using oars, using lines. You didn't have a motor to tow you in to get you to the dock. So by having a mizzen, it does a couple of things. One, when you're raising the sails, when you're out on a mooring or out in the water, it keeps the boat, you can sheet it in tight, and it'll keep the boat heading into the wind. So when you raise the sails, they aren't flopping all over the place. It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
And when you're maneuvering, like if you're coming into a dock, there's times you can, like once the boat gets turned sideways to the wind and you want to turn quickly into the wind, you can sheet the mizzen in tight and let the jib out loose, so it'll make the boat turn quickly into the wind.
Oh, okay.
Things like that. And that combined with, it's got quite a heavy keel. It's a very slim boat. They say it carries a lot of weight. It keeps moving easily when it doesn't stop easily. And because of that, you can coast and do things with it. You've got to get a sense of where it'll go, but you can coast up to the dock. You can coast up to a mooring. It doesn't just stop like a modern sailboat. If you're a modern sailboat, lightweight boat with a efficient hull directly in the wind, it just about stops.
Yeah. Right.
Whereas this one, it'll keep moving. You can turn, you can maneuver, you can do stuff.
Yeah. I see.
So, and then the other thing about this type of older design is that it's got a shallower keel. It doesn't go as deep, and it's a longer keel. It helps it track straighter when you're sailing, so you can walk away from the tiller, leave it alone, and you don't have to watch it all the time. You can do things on the boat as you need to without.
I see. Yeah.
But it also because it's a shallower keel and not a real, it doesn't go to weather. It doesn't point as high as a modern boat, which is not necessarily good. But if you get a big gust of wind, the boat heels over, of course, but it tends to spill the wind out of the sails, and the keel then slides sideways a little bit.
Oh,
and
I see.
this keeps the boat from going over too far.
I see.
I've never had the rail actually in the water on this boat.
Oh,
no matter
really?
how much wind. It'll go over to a certain point. And it'll just stay there and keep going.
And then it'll just kind of let everything pass the boat.
Right, that's right.
I see.
And
interesting. So it's very forgiving.
It's very forgiving, and it's also a safety feature in that this is an open boat.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
This boat, if you did tip it over far enough to get water over the rail, it'll go down like a rock. Because it's got 3,000 pounds of ballast down there. And,
right.
You know.
So this is a planked boat, Carvel planked boat.
Yes. It's
What
Carvel plank.
species of frames and planking?
Frames are oak. The planking is. I thought it was Honduran mahogany, but the latest survey, the guy thought it was Philippine mahogany. But anyway, it's
really?
mahogany
It's
planking.
mahogany on.
Yeah, it's very clear. You can't see a knot in it. It's just a straight and nice, really good hardwood. It's about 7/8 of an inch thick.
Mm-hmm.
Very lightly built boat. The frames aren't very big, as you can see. They're an inch something by a little less than an inch.
Yeah.
And yet, very strong by the way it's put together.
Yeah. So it's a very seaworthy boat.
Yeah, in a sense. The fact that it's very forgiving. The double ender means that if a wave comes up behind, the boat just kind of lifts and the waves part around it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But ultimately, not as seaworthy as a boat that has a self-bailing cockpit.
Right.
So you don't really want to sail it to Hawaii or something.
Yeah.
You could get knocked down and it would sink.
All right. So you're not heading out for Hawaii next week.
No. But any inland water and any coastal cruising stuff like that,
it's comfortable cruising, isn't it?
It is, in fact, quiet and comfortable. Well, the cockpit's deeper than a modern boat.
Yeah,
the seat backs are angled just right to be comfortable. The seats angled a little bit, and it also, as your friend Lee was saying when we brought it over from across Lake Washington a couple of days ago, that it's a very quiet boat.
Okay.
Because of the double-ended stern, the water doesn't burble up in the transom and stuff, and it's kind of surprising how fast you're going because it is so quiet.
Yeah. So what's a cruising speed under sail, roughly?
It gets to hull speed pretty easily. It doesn't take a lot of wind, and hull speed's about 6 knots, just a little over. So it cruises 5.5 to 6 knots pretty easily. If you got 10 knots or more of wind.
Yeah.
We've seen it one day. We were out here actually in a race, and we had a GPS on board, and it was blowing probably 20, 25. We had white caps all over the lake out here.
Yeah.
And on a broad reach, or a beam reach, we were clocking 7.5 knots over the bottom of the GPS.
Wow.
And there's no tide or anything, so it's up through the water. So that's 15% over hull speed, which is pretty good. But it's only a little over 6 feet wide for a 28-foot boat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little narrower, isn't it?
Yeah.
So have you owned other wooden boats over the years?
Only one. And when I sold that, I swore I'd never buy another one.
And then you went and did this.
Well, this is a pretty special boat.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, there just aren't. There's only so many of them, and it's. You sit down here and people come and literally, oh my God, it's a Rozinante, and they just go gaga over it. Yeah, it's almost a cult boat in a sense.
Yeah, how many of these have been built?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Is there any estimates out there?
Not that I know of. I haven't really checked. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, at any given time, there might be 4 or 5 of them for sale that you can find, at least countrywide and possibly worldwide.
And this boat was built up on Lopez Island, in the San Juan Islands. Mm-hmm. And who was the builder again?
Hank Chamberlain, Henry Chamberlain.
Okay.
He passed away just a year or two ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. His son's still around, though, and works with boats. They built the boat, and then they left Lopez not too long after that, I think. And actually, he had a boat that he built, and they sailed around the world with the family. And then he ended up settling in Portland, building boats and houses there.
Yeah. So what was the other wooden boat that you owned, Darryl?
I owned, in fact, there's one kind of similar to it here in the show. It's just a 17-foot Thompson.
Okay.
It's called a Thompson Sea Lancer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little cruising boat.
Yeah.
Okay. Water skiing and stuff like that? Or?
Well, that's what it was for, But it was just more because it had been stored for 30 years and it still had the original, I think, 70-horse motor on it.
Really?
Yeah. Cool. And it all worked. I mean, the boat all worked, except that it had been sitting on blocks in a storage with a big heavy motor on the back, and it had hooked the bottom.
Oh.
So you take it out and drive it, and it would tend to die, like putting your trim tabs way down.
Oh, really?
It would just hook down and go this way and that way as you drove it. So my son and I, propped it in the carport, pushed the bottom out and straightened it out, heated it all up, and
did you really?
Furred it out. And then it was pretty good.
Yeah. Interesting.
But still, in all, I just, it's still a lot of work and stuff.
Yeah, right.
Keep it up. But
yeah, very good.
This boat, though, maintenance-wise, it's probably about as simple a boat to maintain as for a wooden boat, which you can imagine, because there's the only hole in the hull is where the rudder tube goes through.
Oh, okay.
And that's, locked into the wood. It's not something you can take out or get a leak in.
Yeah.
There's no motor inside the boat, so there's no exhaust or propeller shaft or anything. There's no electronics on the boat. And, motors and electronics and all those things, those are things that cause maintenance problems.
Yeah, right.
You got electrolysis problems, you've got oil and junk shipping down, and so because of that, it's so simple that and you can see everything. But you can get to all the frames, you can pull up the floorboards, you can pull all the stuff out of the inside, so you can get to all the parts.
Yeah, everything's easily accessible, isn't it?
Yeah, so it makes it a very easy boat to maintain.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to paint the bottom now and then. You got to get things painted and cleaned up. But, you got to clean the bottom on a plastic boat and keep the blisters off.
Right, yeah. So are these Sitka spruce spars?
Sitka spruce spars, yeah.
Look like they're in real good shape.
They were just varnished last year. Adam Karpinski.
Yeah, I met Adam this morning.
Yeah.
He's got a shop right down here.
Right, Karpinski Marine Carpentry has worked on it last year and this year. And they redid the masts for me and just we refastened the bottom. We painted the bottom. So after 30 years, some of those things need to be done.
Right. Very cool.
But again, it's not. You got to accept that a wooden boat's going to be a little bit of work. But this one certainly is one of the easiest.
Yeah.
To live with.
Good deal. So, any parting comments for our listeners today, Darryl?
Well, it's pretty easy to get hooked on wooden boats.
Yeah, very good. I didn't even pay you to say that.
No.
All right, well, thanks a lot, Darryl. Appreciate it.
No
Enjoy
problem.
the show today.
Okay, you too.
Okay, take care. Thanks, Darryl, for doing that interview. It was great to see your boat and talk to you about some of the intricacies of a mizzen or a ketch rig with a mizzen mast and sail and all that. And you've got a really awesome boat. So thanks for taking time for the interview. And by the way, Darryl is planning on selling that boat. If you do have an interest, you can call him at 425-894-2240. 425-894-2240. Okay, folks, today's episode's a little shorter, but that's okay. Sometimes short is long and good, if you get my drift. And so I hope you've enjoyed the show this week and that you tune in again next week and have some more fun in the wooden boat world. Next, let's see, in a week and a half is the Maritime Heritage Festival down in... It's not right in Portland. It's in St. Helens, which is near Portland, which I'm planning on going down for that. And there's some other fun upcoming events the weekend before that in Portland. Actually, this coming weekend, Sunday, is a Wooden Boat Festival in Portland. And there's some more things listed on my website if you're interested in some of those events. But anyway, get out on the water this week. Have some fun with your wooden boat. If you don't have a wooden boat, go get one, or build one, or restore one, or borrow one, or rent one, or whatever you got to do. Get out on a piece of wood on the water and have some fun, because that's what it's all about. Okay, Wooden Boat Dan, thanks for tuning in again. I guess I already said that, didn't I? Have a great week. Keep the sunny side up and the barnacled side down. Wooden Boat Dan, over and out.